Welcome, fellow Druids, to another episode of Full Circle. Today, I talked about this in the last episode, but we're gonna be doing smaller, bite-sized, well, somewhat bite-sized content. Now, today, what I'm going to have another model unit review that I want to go through, and today it's going to be the Wolves of Orboros. Or this episode, it's going to be the Wolves of Orboros, since I don't know exactly when I'm gonna post these. Okay, so. I'm just going to go through the stats real quick, and then we'll talk about some of their strengths and stuff. So, Wolves of Orboros are a Circle Wolfsworn unit. They're Speed 6, Strength 5, Mat 6, Defense 13, Armor 13, Command 7. They have combined melee attack, Pathfinder. They're small base models. They have their melee weapon is a 2-inch range, Power and Strength 9 weapon. For the point cost of the unit, it is 7 points for 6 models and 11 points for 10. Their field allowance 3. Additionally, they have powerful charge on their cleft spear, which is the melee weapon I just mentioned. Powerful charge means they gain +2 to charge attack rolls with that weapon. And then they have a command attachment, which is the Wolves of Orboros Chieftain and Standard. Similar stat lines. The Chieftain is the only difference is the Chieftain is Mat 7, and he has obviously the officer advantage, and then he comes with the Standard Bearer, who has no attack, same stat line otherwise, and then the Chieftain has 5 wounds. The command attachment costs 4 points, and it is field allowance 3 to match with the field allowance of the full size unit. So, and then additional rules they gain. The Chieftain has a Power Swell, which is a mini feat. This model can use Power Swell once per game at any time during its unit's activation. This activation models in the unit gain an additional die on melee damage rolls. And he brings Tactics reposition 3 inches, which is just the models in the unit gain reposition 3 inches at the end of an activation, which it did not run or fail to charge. Model with reposition 3 inches can advance up to 3 inches, then its activation ends. The Chief has powerful charge on his spear, just the same as the regular models. And then the Standard Bearer has the Standard Bearer rule, which is while this model is within 5 inches of the unit commander, the commander gains +2 command, so that'll take him up to command 9. And take up, which is if this model is destroyed, pardon me, you can choose a grunt in this unit within 1 inch to be destroyed instead. Effects on this model expires. It gains the effects of the chosen grunt. Remove the grunt from the table instead of this model. This model has the same number of unmarked boxes as the grunt. Alright, so Wolves of Orboros. They are our cheapest unit at 11 points for a full unit or 7 points for a minimum unit. They are our cheapest points per model unit that we have. They're a melee unit. They're pretty basic. 13-13 is very mediocre stats. They don't have a lot that's going to keep them alive against things like guns. You're hitting on 7, you're killing on 4s for a simple POW 10. Hitting on 7s if you're Rat 6, sorry. 13's one is okay. 13's a little bit high. Will help you against some light blast damage. 13 defense will help you against some shooting, but not most of it. The 1 wound, so that's not going to really help you. They don't have any built-in defense attack. One thing that they do get is in 1 unit of Wolves of Orboros in the Wild Hunt theme does gain ambush, and that is one way to make sure they get delivered somewhere that is relevant without being shot at. So that's very good. They can hit a little bit deceptively hard. POW 9 is not fantastic, of course, but they do have access to Power Swell. So now you're talking about 4 dice on the attack or on a charge, 4 dice of damage on a POW 9 and their Mat 8 or 9, and then they have CMA on top of that. So you can get up to some pretty respectable numbers if you think about how that works. And then we have a few things that could potentially buff their damage. So that's certainly a situation where this unit that is only a few models is actually going to be able to significantly trade in a favorable direction. Additionally, like I said, Mat 8 is very accurate on the charge. There are other ways to increase that. Wolf Lord Morag has Veteran Leader, which can take them up to 9 on the charge. You could do Vengeance. It's not Vengeance. Grail spell, Death March from Grail, which gives them an additional +2. Carnivore from Morvano 2. Carnage from Chromac 2, and so on and so forth. Anything that buffs their ability to hit is going to make them super accurate. Mat 10 charges are a big deal. They can be. So that's cool. Like I said, POW 9, nothing to write home about, but it's enough on a charge that you're going to kill other infantry, which is cool. They have an 11-inch threat range before any modifiers. One of the neat things you could do with Grail is actually have them charge through your like skinwalkers that are in front of them to do some damage, then have the skinwalkers charge back through them, depending on if you can position Grail for that. So that's another way you can keep them safe. They'd love to have things like stealth, blast immunity is fantastic. Like I said, the ambush is a great rule for them to have in their one unit. But like I said, they're also a very cheap unit. I've seen more recently a Wormwood list where somebody ran 3 units of them with the command attachments. Wormwood wants to get souls anyways, so they're certainly going to die once they're in, once they're the enemy is able to put some attacks on them, but he also has access to things that keep them safe until they do, so that's good. But they're just really our most basic infantry. They can tie things up. 2-inch melee is very good at like getting in the way. They can, like I said, they can do decent amount of work into a little bit of a heavier target. They can do decent work in the like melee and melee against other infantry because they're very accurate, and a POW 9 charge is usually going to be enough to get it done. And if it's not, you have your mini feat. I generally recommend bringing them with the attachment, unless you literally just want a small unit that provides you with souls, like with a Wormwood. That might be the direction you go. I think with the way themes shake out now, it's going to probably work out differently. I would absolutely always bring one, well, maybe not absolutely always, but I would certainly consider one unit with the attachment every time I built a Wild Hunt list, because that ambush benefit is very, very strong right now. Being able to ambush on these scenarios is very, very helpful. Reposition 3 in them is pretty interesting, because a lot of times they're going to sort of charge in and bunch up, and then being able to spread back out a little bit more to be a little bit better against blast damage, or like kill the front line and engage the next line. Things like that is going to be pretty helpful for you. However, don't expect the world out of these guys, right? Like I said, 13-13, 1 wound. The one dude does have 5, but this is your most basic of troops. You're not going to get tons of work out of them. This is, if you were Cricks, these would be the equivalent of Mechanothralls. These Karax and Scorn are very similar in point cost and abilities. Krill Warriors and Trollbloods, and these all of these sort of like baseline units sort of excel a little bit at one thing, or maybe like a little bit at a couple things, but are not going to be the most amazing unit. And that's on purpose. They're not supposed, like you're not supposed to get premium guys for a very inexpensive cost. And you're not here. One of the things that they do have over, if you look through all the factions of that like very basic unit, these guys have native Pathfinder. I mean, all things in Circle do, or except the Skinwalkers, but that's kind of a big deal if you start looking at the benefits that some of those really cheap units have over them, and then you sort of factor in Pathfinder, and you're, and I know that can be situational on the table, but it's certainly not something you shouldn't consider. I think, like I said, any caster, and we talked about the Wild Hunt you can catch my episode where I talked about that theme force and like who it plays well with, but I think any of those casters that I talk about playing well with the Wolfsworn theme, the Wild Hunt theme, will play Wolves of Orboros pretty well. I would certainly consider, once you're going there, the ability for them to provide Gangfighter and Sikkim for Warwolves, even if you don't have Reeves of Orboros, which is sort of traditionally how that you would trigger that. Definitely something to consider. Wolflord Morag, as I said, increasing their attack damage. Tactician from Grail is going to be relevant. And then anybody who provides any sort of buff to their survivability or to their hitting power, I think is going to be good. You may want to consider, the first unit you're going to take is probably going to be the one that you're going to ambush with most games. But if you're taking like a second, third unit, you're going to want to consider how are you delivering them, or is the purpose of them just to have a lot of them? So maybe you do just take 2 units, and you say, well, as long as I can keep my attachment alive so that I can power swell, and I can get, say, half the unit across the board, half of each unit, I didn't spend that much on them compared to more expensive options like, say, Blood Trackers, Ravagers, Skinwalkers, things like that. And as long as they get that far, I can get work out of them. Maybe that's a strategy. I think your first unit's going to be the one that ambushes, though, in the Wild Hunt, and that may be the only one a lot of times, because you can keep that one unit safe. It's going to do work. again, somebody like Wormwood, he's fine with some attrition across the table. He can also protect them with his forest, depending on what he needs to do. Someone like Tanith, on the other hand, she doesn't do anything to protect her infantry, so the ambush plan seems to be a better one, in my opinion. Grail can give himself. There's things like that. So, anyways, I'm not going to make... This isn't going to be a very long episode, but Wolves of Orboros are a great baseline unit. I think if you really are looking to play in the Wild Hunt, look to play them. Go back and check out my video on the Wild Hunt if you're not sure exactly where to play them. But this is sort of just a quick basic overview of what the Wolves of Orboros can do. So thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.